Hello, I'm Andrew Pritchard, and thank you for watching today's Corn Belt Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Checking in with the jet stream here on Tuesday morning, watching kind of a flat flow across the lower 48 right now. We've got some short waves embedded within the flow there. One right here making its way out of the Canadian Prairie right now, dropping south, and that's bringing another chance of some isolated showers and storms to parts of the eastern Corn Belt, but bringing a reinforcing shot of some milder and less humid air. And this is something we've dealt with a lot here in parts of the eastern Corn Belt, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. Some of these shots of not necessarily cooler temperatures, but a milder and less humid air mass, where we're still seeing high temperatures in the 80s. Again, not totally seasonably inappropriate, but dew points in the 50s and 60s to give us these cool overnights, these crisp mornings, and really pleasant afternoons. As we look at the 10-day temperature forecast, we're going to keep this cooler air mass in parts of the Corn Belt here overall over the next 5 days or so before we do bring in a warmer pattern across a huge chunk of the country. But there are some wild cards within that. It's a bit of a tricky forecast in the 7 to 10 day time frame, and we're going to break that down here in just a moment. The week 1 and week 2 precipitation forecast, some promise here across parts of the eastern and central Corn Belt that badly need it. Parts of Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. And we'll kind of break down some of those precipitation chances as we get into the later part of this week. And then as we head into week 2, again, really low confidence. What should be an overall drier pattern across a big chunk of the Corn Belt, a hot and dry pattern. We got some wild cards moving into the forecast here. And again, we'll talk about what these are, but perhaps keeping some precipitation in the forecast across parts of the eastern Corn Belt in what should really be a drier pattern. So low confidence in that, and we'll talk about why here in a moment. The last 24 hours of precipitation, we've seen some slow-moving thunderstorms across parts of the eastern Corn Belt here from Iowa into Missouri and Illinois, central and eastern Corn Belt really, that were slow-moving last night and dropped some heavy rain. Unfortunately, a little bit south of some of the areas that badly need it. Now, it's not necessarily the way that we want to do this here is go without rain for 60 days and then drop 7 inches of rain on some of these fields. Not necessarily ideal, but if we could have brought some heavier precipitation to some of this area from Iowa into northern and central Illinois, into northern and central Indiana, that would have been fantastic. But like I said, maybe some opportunities for that as we get to the later part of next week. Here is that corridor here. When we look at the last 60 days of precipitation, departure from normal, this red, warmer shaded area from Iowa into the northern half of Illinois, the northern 2/3 or so of Indiana, even getting into parts of southern Michigan, parts of western Ohio. Really this area that we want to work over the next week or two to try and erode some of this precipitation deficit before it gets too severe. I want to check in with some of the storms we did see over that area there. We're looking at the Lincoln, Illinois radar right now, parts of central Illinois. This is Champaign-Urbana. I'm going to go ahead and circle it right over here where our home office is located here, the Agribole and the Nutrien Champaign campus. And if I go ahead and play this is what we call training thunderstorms. We had this frontal boundary kind of stalled in this area, and then as the sun went down, we saw these thunderstorms kind of popping up along it, with their general motion kind of moving to the east, maybe a small southerly clip, but early on this was a very easterly storm track. And so what you get is a situation where these storms are kind of going over the exact same areas over and over, literally like train cars. You can kind of imagine each one of these little storms is a train car that's going across. And so this is a pattern that can deliver sometimes severe weather, but this is really a heavy rain and a flooding pattern, and we certainly did see some flash flooding in some of this area. We did see a couple of tornado reports, a couple severe weather reports as well, some damaging wind in some of these areas. So, some severe weather, but really was a heavy rain producing situation. But if I go back here, not heavy rain producing for everyone. Playing it one more time, check out our home office here in Champaign-Urbana. We had lightning flashing in the southern sky for probably 3, 4, maybe 5 hours last night, thunder rumbling in the distance, all kinds of rain just about 15 miles off to our south, where they're dealing with severe weather and flash flood warnings. Completely dry here, except for maybe a few raindrops here in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. So again, it's a pattern that is bringing some rain to some people, but there are folks who are remaining dry in this pattern. And unfortunately, here in Champaign-Urbana, the crunchy grass, the brown grass will live on some of these crispy crops as well. We'll have to wait a few more days at least for that opportunity for some rain. Jumping ahead then, we'll look at the satellite picture here on Tuesday morning. Here are the very cold cloud tops from those thunderstorms now making their way across parts of the Ohio River Valley. You see the counterclockwise swirl in the atmosphere here across the Canadian prairies into the Dakotas. This is our next little wave that's kind of falling in behind this one, bringing that reinforcing shot of milder, less humid air to the eastern Corn Belt. Also going to bring a chance for some isolated showers and storms to parts of the upper Mississippi Valley, the upper Midwest, into the eastern Corn Belt over the next 24 to 48 hours. Looking underneath those clouds now at the radar picture here is the thunderstorm activity across the Ohio River Valley, continuing to produce some very heavy rains in parts of that area. And then you see widely scattered showers and storms associated with that upper level low dropping from the southeast out of the northwest here across the northern plains, moving into the upper Midwest. Looking at the surface map here, again, there is the wave across the northern plains. This is what's going to be dropping south into parts of the Midwest here in the eastern Corn Belt. Here's the frontal boundary that is bringing the shower and thunderstorm activity to parts of the Ohio River Valley before moving off into parts of the northeast region over the next 24 to 48 hours. As we look at the high-resolution rapid refresh model, this will take us through the next day and a half. We'll go ahead and let this play and then kind of bring it back here to Tuesday morning. Heading into the afternoon, we see the heavier precipitation moving off to the east and away from the Corn Belt here. This becomes a northeast region deal as we head into Tuesday afternoon. But here's the surface wave kind of moving, or the upper level low moving out of the northern plains, kind of bringing a chance for some isolated showers and storms to this region as we head through Tuesday afternoon and evening. So perhaps here in Champaign, Illinois, maybe we get our downpour today. Who knows? But this is going to be widely scattered, widely isolated shower and storm activity across the northern plains into the upper Midwest, and then eventually down into the eastern Corn Belt as we talk about Tuesday afternoon and evening. Looking at the high-resolution NAM model, this is going to take us out a bit further now into the mid to late parts of the week. We go through the day on Tuesday, again watching this heavier precipitation moving out of the Ohio River Valley and into the eastern Corn Belt, or out of the Ohio River Valley into the northeast region, and then watch this region here for some isolated showers and storms popping up as we head through the afternoon and evening. Again, very light, very isolated in nature. Some folks are going to get a downpour. A lot of people, the majority of people in that circle, that oval I just drew, are going to be dry as we head through the day Tuesday, but perhaps some seeing a downpour. Same story really as we head through the day Wednesday, just a little bit further south. You can still see this kind of spin making its way through parts of Wisconsin during the overnight, the early morning hours on Wednesday. Before it lights back up, the sun comes out, we destabilize the atmosphere just enough to get some showers and storms to pop up here across parts of Illinois and Indiana as we head through Wednesday afternoon and evening. Again, going to be light, going to be isolated in nature, but another opportunity for some people here to get a downpour in some areas that badly need it on Wednesday afternoon and evening. Total precipitation accumulation forecast here. Again, high resolution NAM model will just play it out. You can see a couple corridors here. Here is the corridor here from the northern plains into the upper Midwest. We're maybe seeing some isolated showers, isolated thunderstorm activity, watching for some isolated thunderstorm activity across parts of the northern high plains. Then dry for a lot of people. It really is, opportunities for some people to see some rain here, but really a dry overall pattern for the next 2 days or so. The severe weather forecast here will go from top left to the bottom here. We're talking about Tuesday, maybe an isolated strong storm here from that upper level low dropping across parts of the upper Mississippi Valley, so maybe eastern Minnesota, western Wisconsin, seeing a storm pop up, maybe getting strong enough to produce some hail is what I'd be concerned about there. Same story, perhaps seeing maybe a hail-producing thunderstorm as we get into the day on Wednesday. Not seeing a marginal risk there. That's just the general thunderstorm outlook, but still with very cold upper-level cloud top or upper-level temperatures, we could see the potential for maybe some of the strongest storms producing some small hail across parts of Illinois and Indiana during the day on Wednesday. Thursday, we'll have to start watching the Central Plains, and this is going to be what's going to be bringing the precipitation eventually into the Eastern Corn Belt by the time we get to the weekend. And we'll talk about what that system looks like here, looking at the European model. Talking about the 500 millibar height anomalies right now. Here's the upper level low that's bringing the reinforcing shot of the milder, less humid air to the Eastern Corn Belt, also bringing the isolated shower and storm chances to the upper Midwest and Eastern Corn Belt Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday afternoon. Let's go ahead, we'll take the drawings off and see where we are headed, and this is where we introduce the question marks. This wave moves through. By the time we get to the end of the week, we're keeping troughing overall across the northern plains. That's what's keeping the cooler temperatures in this region as we head through the mid to late parts of the work week. It's as we get into the weekend And then possibly, or beyond that, getting into early next week, we really start to see the pattern take on this broader ridge overall. We were looking at a pattern that had this deeper trough in the region just 24 to 48 hours ago that was keeping things cooler over here, and then potentially warmer in the eastern half of the country, and then active here across the central U.S., parts of the Corn Belt. But now seeing this broader ridge overall, and this big wild card moving into parts of the Corn Belt. We're seeing the forecast here of a small wave across parts of the Gulf Coast, maybe making its way into parts of the eastern Corn Belt as we talk about early next week. That would introduce the potential for a cloudy, overcast, cooler, rainy pattern across parts of the eastern Corn Belt, parts of the Mid-South, and what should overall be a hot and dry pattern. This look right here, this is hot for a lot of people across the midsection or across the central U.S., across really the entire lower 48, and a pattern that deflects most of the rain off to the north as well with those storm systems. So this is where we get the big question marks, big uncertainty, and a lot of that is due in part to the model struggling to kind of pick up on what's going to happen with this wave early next week coming up from the Gulf Coast. As we take a look, we'll go ahead and I'm going to skip past the 500 millibar wind speeds, and we'll take a look at the temperature forecast here as we go through the next 7 days. Starting off with warmer temperatures here across the eastern Corn Belt, but of course we're getting that reinforcing shot of cooler air coming in from the northwest now. As we get into the middle part of the week, getting into the later part, you're still seeing those temperatures anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees cooler than average from the northern plains into the central and eastern Corn Belt, really the entire Corn Belt dealing with cooler temperatures for much of Wednesday and Thursday. By the time we get to Friday, we can kind of draw a line right in there where we've got cooler weather again continuing for much of the Corn Belt. Warmer air, though, starting to build in from the south as we get into the late part of the week. We're looking at Friday now, getting into Saturday, and then it's as we get into early next week now. Here is Monday and then Tuesday, and you're starting to see the pattern change where we get this broader ridge. We're really warming up for most of the lower 48. And where you see it not warming up, though, is that area that I kind of circled right here. Parts of the eastern Corn Belt, parts of the eastern the Mid-South is the word that I'm looking for, dealing with that potentially cloudy, cooler, overcast pattern. And that is what the European model is showing right now, and why we've got temperatures anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees above average across much of the Corn Belt. But then you look at that little circled area, and we're seeing temperatures 5, 10, 15 degrees cooler than average. So I got very low confidence in this. I'm not telling you this is what's going to happen when we get to next week. I'm just showing you this is why the models are kind of struggling. There are other moving parts here, but when we kind of hone in on the Corn Belt, this is a big factor here. And where we've got some uncertainty, just looking 7 days in the future, that's not unreasonably far to be looking out. And it's not. It's relatively uncommon that we've got this low of confidence when we look at the next 7 to 10 day time frame. We'll look at the instability forecast here, and this will kind of help us guide our thunderstorm forecasting over the next week or so. Bringing it back here to Tuesday afternoon, again seeing a kind of low instability here, but with that upper level low moving through the region, just enough to kick off some of those showers and storms. The higher instability off to the south here, where we're seeing those heavier rain and thunderstorms right now making their way into the southern U.S. As we get into the mid part of the next week, or the mid part of this week, we're looking at Wednesday and Thursday. We see that cooler air mass spilling into the region, really stabilizing a big chunk of the Corn Belt as we talk about getting into Thursday and Friday, but starting to pump some of that moisture, starting to pump a primed air mass back into the region by the time we get to late next week. We're looking at Friday now and Saturday, and now you're starting to see some of that instability making its way back into the eastern Corn Belt. That, along with a flatter flow from the jet stream, sneaking a couple short waves across the region, that's what's going to keep thunderstorms in the forecast here across this region that badly needs it, from the parts of Iowa into Illinois and Indiana. As again, you can just kind of play it out. We're continuing to pump this primed and unstable air mass into the region. I'm kind of shuffling back and forth between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, where you really continue to see an unstable air mass in place here, and that's going to keep the chance for the thunderstorms in the forecast here across the Corn Belt, across parts of the Corn Belt that badly need it. So watching a very primed air mass across parts of the high plains. We'll have to watch and talk about the severe weather potential as we get into early next week as well. We'll have further updates on that both in our Thursday morning ag forecast, and then I'll talk about the Corn Belt again when we get to Friday. But just kind of showing you, and I know I'm talking a lot about this corridor here, Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana, but this is where we badly need some rain, and why I really want to be kind of pointing out when the next opportunities for that would be, which again is going to be isolated in nature Tuesday and Wednesday perhaps. more widespread, as we'll see here as we get into the weekend. This is the precipitation forecast here from the European model as we head through Tuesday and Wednesday kind of quickly. Again, you're seeing the system sneak through this region, bringing shower and storm chances in isolated fashion Tuesday and Wednesday. To take the drawing off now as we get into the day on Thursday, this is when we'll start to introduce the potential for some thunderstorm corridors here across the northern and central plains, tracking eastward into the central and eastern corn belt. So this is the key time frame, I would say, for you in Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana for trying to make a dent on this precipitation, what we're going to have to really watch, and what we'll check in with again here Thursday morning and Friday morning with our next forecasts for the region. So we're talking about Friday, watching potentially one or more waves of thunderstorms making their way across the region. And then as we get into early next week, here's our big wild card. You can watch it kind of coming up. This surge of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico in the Monday and Tuesday timeframe of next week. Again, low confidence in that. I'm more pointing it out to let you know it's there, and I'm kind of pointing it out to let you know that this is why we're seeing some big uncertainty within the weather models, especially across the eastern corn belt as we get into the 7-day time frame, 8, 9, 10 days and beyond. Big question marks as far as what happens with the system coming up out of the south. But the best news, or what we can at least worry about right now, is kind of just focusing on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday time frame, looking at the potential for several waves of shower and storm activity across parts of Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, those regions that we badly need to get some rain. The total precipitation forecast, and again, if you can focus right on that corridor, we start to build some in, especially towards the end of that loop. It's kind of slow going until we get to the end there, and if I bring the scroller back and step through time, we can really point out that does happen here. We get through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. A lot of what you're seeing here is this precipitation that's happening now, Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon, so kind of ignore some of this stuff. As we get it all the way to Thursday, we're still dry across this region. So really dry for many as we talk about the pattern through Thursday afternoon. It's Thursday evening then, we start to see things lighting up over on the west side of this oval and then progressing from west to east through the weekend. So here it is. We'll go back one more time. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's the time frame we'll be watching for some of this shower and storm activity across, again, this corridor that badly needs some significant precipitation. Looking side by side at the European and the GFS model, the European on the left, GFS over here on the right, and we see a similar look as we look at the central plains into the eastern corn belt. So we've got some agreement here with the opportunities for showers and storms. We know the nature that these storms happen. It's not going to be a uniform precipitation. We know that the nature is going to dictate that some are going to get downpours, some will unfortunately remain dry. But this is a pretty promising look as we look in the next 4 to 5 days, talking about a more widespread area, seeing not just one opportunity for thunderstorms, which is where we often end up in trouble when we talk about looking at just yesterday, for example, where some people got 5 to 6 inches of rain just to my south, and then here in Champaign-Urbana we ended up dry. Of course, when we're talking about just one frontal passage, that ends up being problematic like that. But a pattern like we're seeing advertised here Friday, Saturday, Sunday, potentially beyond that, with more than 2 chances for some precipitation across the area, you end up getting a better coverage and perhaps seeing more people getting some beneficial rains there. So before I keep rambling on, we'll go ahead and we'll move on. Again, look at the high temperature forecast just to kind of close it out. And what you're going to be seeing is cooler temperatures off to the north, the heat kind of trapped off to the south, at least over the next 4 to 5 days. Your temperatures for the highs on Tuesday in the 60s across the Dakotas into parts of the upper Midwest. Some of that air going to be moving off to the south for the day on Wednesday, and then Thursday, this is when we start to moderate, start to warm back up here Friday. And then looking at Saturday, starting to introduce some 90s back to parts of the Ohio River Valley, seeing those 90s kind of creeping up into the high plains as well. As always, Eric Snodgrass will have an in-depth look at the next 1 to 2 weeks in our Thursday morning ag forecast video, and I'll be back with your next look at the Corn Belt region on Friday morning. Have a great day.